Chapter 1275. Your Majesty, take a look. What is this? Renbaqian returned to the palace and excitedly placed a picture in front of the Empress. The Empress looked at him disdainfully. She had been to the universe, traveled to other planets, and even hunted down the king of that planet for a few months. Do you think I'm a country bumpkin? She stretched out her hand and gestured a few times. Is this Wuxia planet? It doesn't look very round. Where is my dayo? Tisk tsk, it's only the size of a fingernail. I will conquer the huge territory in the south while I'm still alive. That place is pleasing to the eye, and can be the foundation of the country. Your Majesty, it's good to be ambitious, but you still have to restrain yourself and think about it when you can defeat Goddess Stainless. Renbaqian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You usually watch TV series, eat snacks, drink and play around, and don't even care about court affairs. If you put your mind on cultivation, you might already be able to run amok in the foreign regions. Is there no one in such a big area in the north? The Empress turned her gaze to the north, which was a large area of alternating yellow and white. There seems to be a small number of nomads in the north of Great Xia, but they are few in number, Renbaqian said. In fact, Great Xia doesn't care about the nomads in the north and just takes some precautions. After all, the environment there is too harsh. From the map, there are mostly deserts, rocky areas and ice fields. There are very few green areas, and it's not suitable for survival. Aborigines? The Empress muttered. Renbaqian was slightly stunned. Her words gave him a flash of inspiration, and he suddenly thought of something. Some questions that had always existed, but he hadn't thought much about it. There were actually Aborigines in this area. For example, Great Xia and Dayo were the descendants of humans who originally went north. However, the Chen nation was established by the refugees of Great Xia and the Aborigines. Where did these Aborigines come from? Why were they all humans? It was understandable that the Aborigines in the area where the Chen nation was located were suitable for survival, but why were there Aborigines in the uninhabitable area in the north of Great Xia? Before the arrival of the humans, Great Xia was a barren land without the existence of civilization. Renbaqian thought about it and decided to send people to the Chen nation to investigate. He also had to investigate more in the northern region to see if there were any gains. What are you thinking about? The Empress asked when she saw that Renbaqian was distracted. I'm thinking about the natives. Renbaqian came back to his senses and told her what he was thinking about just now. There are many things I don't know. I don't even know where my brother is wandering in the wilderness. The whereabouts of my father and the late emperor are also unknown. The Empress's expression did not change much. Some things had happened a long time ago, and there was no need to be anxious. In other words, unless she was willing to throw everything aside and dive into that door, there was no point in thinking about it any further. Renbaqian was silent. Until now, he still didn't know what was behind the door that his brother-in-law had entered. He only knew that it was a one-way door that led to an unknown area. There were indeed too many suspicious points in this world. Did you send the detector over? Did you find anything? Renbaqian asked after a day. The detector has been sent over. Just as we calculated, the crimson moon is fake. It's just an illusion, and the detector directly entered it. However, there seems to be some interference inside, and we haven't received any news yet. However, there is something strange. Although it's an illusion from the trajectory of the detector when it entered it, there is an obvious curve, which means that there is gravity inside. Continue to pay attention and inform me immediately if there is any news. Renbaqian knew that the crimson moon was very mysterious. After all, it could hang in the sky for tens of thousands of years without anyone noticing that it was fake. After all, such a peculiar existence wasn't that easy to detect. However, there was no progress at all, which disappointed Renbaqian. It couldn't be said that there was no progress. At least he knew one thing. The existence of gravity meant that it wasn't purely an illusion, and there must be something inside. After pondering for a while, Renbaqian contacted the 60,000 mountains. Continue to put 5 signal transmitters into the door every hour for 3 days. Tie them to any animal and throw them in. 3 days was the time it took for the heavenly eye to circle Wuxia planet. Although it wasn't a communication satellite, it had a certain ability to receive signals. If Wuxia planet was still behind the door, it might be able to receive signals and find the location of his brother-in-law and the late emperor. Rinpoche didn't mention this matter to the Empress for the next 2 days. Since there was no signal, there was no need to mention it. In addition, the pictures of Wuxia planet that came later attracted most of Rinpoche's attention. Are you still looking? You have been looking for a day. The Empress walked into a hall and saw Rinpoche standing in front of a wall with pictures hanging on it. Are there flowers on it? It's very strange. Rinpoche frowned. The other side of Wuxia planet was very strange. There wasn't a large piece of land, only a few scattered islands, and the ocean was almost all black. 5 huge whirlpools were distributed on the surface of the sea like the mouths of giant beasts, swallowing an immeasurable amount of seawater every second. Even satellites could clearly see the existence of the 5 vortexes from high up in the sky. One could imagine their size. These 5 whirlpools have never changed and haven't moved, Rinpoche said in a deep voice. Moreover, the distribution of these 5 whirlpools is just right. 4 of them are at the 4 corners and 1 is in the middle, as if they are guarding. I suspect that this isn't naturally formed. Rinpoche was a little uncertain. After all, the wonders of nature were sometimes difficult to speculate with ordinary thinking. No matter what the reason is, you have no other way but to think about it. What's the use of thinking about it? The Empress hit the nail on the head. Rinpoche opened his mouth. This attack had hit the nail on the head. It's better to think of ways to get more money. 2-1 came to me again. Too much money is invested in the 60,000 mountains every year. Even if we extort money from other countries, it will be difficult to support it. I think the lottery is a good idea. They are all your people. It's not good to think of ways to get money from them, right? Rinpoche was still thinking about things like the problem of the black seawater, but these things were thrown aside by the Empress. Since they are my people and I have difficulties, shouldn't they have the money to pay for it? Also, those aristocratic families and rich merchants have amassed a lot of money over the years, especially the biggest ones. If they weren't content with their lot, I would have taken the sword and taken it myself. Since they are so content, why not introduce an inheritance tax? Rinpoche smacked his lips and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Then force them to rebel, and you can take the sword yourself? This was Dayo, not Earth or those modern countries. Dayo's development was radical enough. If something like an inheritance tax was really introduced, I'm afraid that the court officials would be the first to jump in anger. Or can we reduce the investment in the 60,000 mountains? After all, the sea route is now open, so the investment is much smaller and the transportation time isn't considered long. No, there are turbulent currents deep in the coast. Ships can only go near the shore, and the transportation volume can't be increased. The investment in the 60,000 mountains must continue. Not only can it not be reduced, but it should also be increased. Rinpoche decisively rejected the idea. Rather than collecting an inheritance tax, it is better to collect a wealth tax. Families with an annual income of 100,000 yuan will have to pay a certain percentage of the tax. The higher the income, the more wealth, and the more they have to pay. At the very least, this will clearly tell those people that the country needs money and that if they have money, they should take more. Then let's collect a wealth tax. The Empress made the final decision. She was least afraid that someone would dare to rebel. Chapter 1276. You're here. Don't tell me you're here to talk about the wealth tax? Rinpoche asked as he put down the documents in his hands. He first leaked the news of the wealth tax to the court, so that the others could be mentally prepared. Just as he had expected, just a leak would cause countless people to object. It should be known that if a wealth tax were to be imposed, the ones who would suffer the most would be the senior officials, wealthy merchants, and aristocratic families. These people happen to be the people at the top of a country. So be it. What's the point of keeping so many things that you won't bring with you when you're born, and you won't bring with you when you die? How could they hope for a long time to come? In any case, it was fine as long as he could leave some for his descendants. No matter what, he wouldn't empty the family's assets, right? Wasn't it the same when he didn't have money? Now, after a few good years, each and every one of them has become pretentious. Tang Xinye grinned and said straightforwardly, "It would be great if everyone thought like you." Ren Baqian shook his head slightly. This was reasonable, but he would feel the pinch if he took out his things, even if it was just a little. It was the same throughout the ages. However, he wasn't afraid that those people would form an alliance. Just like what the Empress had said, she was least afraid of someone rebelling. Under the suppression of absolute strength, there was no way he could stir up any waves. "Then why are you free to come to the palace today? We'll talk about it later. Aren't you going to take a look at the liveliness outside?" Tang Xinye laughed. Lively? Ren Baqian was puzzled. Tang Xinye had informed him to watch the show, so it was definitely not an ordinary show. Qin Chuan, Minister of War, beat up Xianhua, Minister of Rights? Or Shi Qing and Zhikohai fought over a girl in a brothel? What have I missed in the palace these past few days? You don't know? Tang Xinye widened his eyes. What should I know? Ren Baqian was baffled. Someone is challenging the princess. The princess is waiting on the palace wall. Huh. Ren Baqian was even more baffled. Someone challenged two flowers? What was going on? What was going on? Waiting on the walls of the palace? How could I not know about such a big thing? It's a young swordsman from Great Xia who is seeking a breakthrough and challenged the number one person of the younger generation. Tang Xinye said with a smile. Yu Qing is the number one of the younger generation? What else do you think? Tang Xinye glanced at him. Do you believe that you can't beat her? Isn't that obvious? Ren Baqian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. His strength was like a hammer. On the surface, it was still all right. However, if he were to really fight with someone of the same level, he reckoned that he would be beaten senseless. What's more, Twin Flower was an immortal sky cultivator. It made sense. Honeysuckle's longevity heaven's strength was indeed the best among the younger generation. The Empress was the number one expert of the previous generation, and Hua was the number one expert of this generation. In this family of three, he was the only one who was crippled. Let's go and take a look. Ren Baqian shook his head slightly. Where's the commander? Ren Baqian asked the guard as he exited the door. The commander is at the palace wall. I'm the only one who doesn't know, right? Ren Baqian glared at him. His Majesty came by just now, but you were dealing with some documents. I called you twice, but you didn't respond and left again. His Majesty was the one who allowed Sir Tong to enter. Ren Baqian slapped his head. So that was what happened. Your Highness has guts. Tang Xinye gave him a thumbs up. Your Majesty is so generous. Ren Baqian turned his head and walked out in a bad mood. When he went up to the palace wall above the palace gate, he saw a big umbrella with two chairs and a small table with melon seeds and snacks on it. Two women were sitting there and eating melon seeds. You guys are so leisurely. Ren Baqian was speechless when he saw this. He was working himself to death, but these two women were having a good time. I called you just now, but seeing that you were busy, I didn't want to disturb you. The Empress was very unique in eating melon seeds. She grabbed a handful and threw them directly into her mouth without spitting them out. Ren Baqian sensed something and looked into the distance. He saw that there were actually many people squeezing on both sides, making a path in the middle. A young man in a long robe with a saber at his waist, and his left hand pressing on it walked over step by step from afar. His aura was rising. Looking at this scene, Ren Baqian felt a little familiar. After thinking about it carefully, something like this happened many years ago. However, at that time, he was below, squeezed in the crowd, and watched the heroic appearance of the Empress. Thinking of that scene, Ren Baqian sighed in his heart. Time passed quickly, and Hua had grown so much. Time was really scary. On the other hand, the Empress hadn't changed at all. A wild spirit will expert? This strength is not bad. Ren Baqian evaluated after sensing it. The number one swordsman in Great Xia, Su Baimei. He's very powerful, but look at me. He's still no match for me. Hua looked down with a serious expression. Nonsense, there's a gap between the two of you. Ren Baqian kicked the chair, and Hua stood up to make way. She then stood at the top of the city wall, and immediately attracted a lot of cheers. Hua was still very popular. As a princess of the imperial family, she was beautiful, the strongest person of the younger generation, and a strong practitioner of longevity heaven. Her personal style wasn't considered domineering, but rather close to the people. Naturally, she was very popular. She was even catching up to the Empress. I want him alive. Renbaqian thought about this for a while, but didn't say it out loud. He would just let Erhua be. However, she was different from the Empress. After all, she had studied on Earth for so many years. Although she was usually a little mischievous, she rarely hurt people. As the young man's aura rose steadily, it was at its peak when he arrived at the palace. Experts who had been honed in battle would usually use this method to make their attacks when their aura was at its peak. However, when he was about 200 meters away from the palace, he was blocked by someone. A young man with his hair tied up at the back of his head, wearing baggy sweatpants and a white t-shirt, looking hip-hop style, was holding an iron piece, iron sword, upside down in his hand? Want to challenge first, is that Li Dai? I thought he was going to make a scene with Yao Yaoke. His stuttering hasn't healed yet? Erhua burst out laughing when he heard Renbaqian's words. Father, you aren't usually so funny. There's something wrong with your style. But why did this guy come out? I said I don't need him. I haven't fought for a long time. Erhua frowned and twitched the corner of his mouth. The Empress nodded and said, although he's not as strong as the other party, he has a sword intent. He's a talent. While they were talking, the two people below had already started fighting. The great Xia swordsman didn't respond. He turned his body halfway and a huge wave appeared in the air. The huge wave formed by the blade was extremely violent, as if it was going to destroy anyone and everything in front of it. Li Dai was like a dead tree in the huge wave, constantly being pushed up and thrown down by the huge wave. Li Dai was at a disadvantage after one face-to-face encounter, but his footwork was still steady. His eyes were fixed in front of him, looking for any possible flaws, and his sword was always behind his back. At some point, Li Dai's eyes flashed, and the sword in his hand quietly stabbed forward. That idiot fell into the trap. Erhua curled his lips. The front is to deceive the enemy. The momentum of the blade looks fierce, but in fact it's restrained and reserved. The real killer move is the hidden blade at the back. That's when you look at it from a higher level. You might not be able to do as well as him. After all, Li Dai's strength is much lower than his opponent's. Renbaqian didn't understand anything. Just like what Erhua said, the huge wave suddenly disappeared. A soft sound was heard, and the two of them had changed positions. Good. Li Dai spat out. His body swayed, and there was a bloody wound from his chest to his throat. Su Baimei ignored Li Dai, who was behind him. His opponent's swordsmanship was fast, but his blade was faster. His target was up there. He looked up and saw a lady in blue standing above him. Behind her were a few figures sitting down. One of them made him feel suffocated just by looking at him from afar. Qi Xiao? She's actually here. Su Baimei tried his best to focus his gaze on Erhua. However, he felt a chill in his crotch and his belt loosened. He quickly grabbed it and didn't embarrass himself. Damn it! That bastard! When did he cut it? Su Baimei cursed in his heart. He only felt that the sword was fast, but he didn't expect it to be so fast and cut his belt. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have held back. However, he had accumulated momentum along the way and had defeated another person. But now, he was completely deflated. Deeply embarrassed, he pulled up his pants with one hand and challenged her. He immediately turned around and left, not leaving a single word behind. Everyone was waiting to see the princess display her prowess in this challenge. But no one expected the sudden appearance of a person and a sword to turn it into a farce. I want to deduct his salary. I want to deduct his salary. Erhua looked at Su Baimei from the top of the wall, and gritted his teeth in anger. The Empress pondered and said, he's a good seed. It's a waste to keep him by Erhua's side. Send him to the Wall of Two Worlds. One had to know that Li Dai had just attained the spirit will level, while Su Baimei was already condensing a heaven-grade weapon. The fact that he could cut Su Baimei's belt without anyone noticing showed his strength. It's just a little broken. Renbaqian said. He didn't find it boring. This farce was much more interesting than watching Erhua beat up the #1 swordsman of Great Xia. Furthermore, he didn't realize that Li Dai, the stammer, was so mischievous. End of this chapter. Chapter 1277. The challenge in front of the palace turned into a farce, but it didn't have much of an impact. It was just a topic of conversation for some people in the capital. On the other hand, Li Dai's salary was deducted for half a year. However, Li Dai didn't care. To him, a steamed bun, a bowl of water, and a rusted sword were enough. He was a very pure person who lived in his own world, the world of the sword. As for Su Baimei, who came in aggressively but left abruptly, not many people cared about him. Perhaps he was very famous in Great Xia, but this was Dayo. A week later, the imperial court officially announced the details of the wealth tax. Renbaqian also met with some of the heads of the aristocratic families. Although there were still objections, they were forcefully suppressed. There were two voices in Dayo. One was the Empress, and the other was Renbaqian. No one dared to question the former's control over the aboriginals. Renbaqian's reputation in the Jing tribe and the Yun nation was also very high. As a result, the forced implementation of the wealth tax was pushed back. As for whether anyone dared to conceal the data during the tax count, Renbaqian couldn't be bothered to think about it. In any case, he would deal with whoever he caught. For this reason, he didn't even hesitate to transfer elite troops to increase the investigation and military department of the Ministry of Finance. At that time, everyone would know that they could do anything as long as they didn't know the imperial court money. Master, the little loli who has been with you the longest every day is here. The air flashed twice, and a loli with a washboard figure in a cool swimsuit appeared. Tell me if there's any news. Renbaqian didn't even look up. You are really perversely cold. The loli pouted. Renbaqian finally looked up at her thoughtfully and said, These words aren't convincing at all coming from your mouth. Besides, I haven't heard these words before. Recently, I have a feeling that your intelligence has grown again. Master, you aren't going to slice me up, are you? The loli shrank back. Do you want a body? Renbaqian asked back. You really want to slice me up? The loli was shocked. Forget it if you don't want it. Yes, of course. You can do it the way you like. A figure flashed in the air, and it turned into a voluptuous girl wearing glasses. Ahem, Erha suits you better. Renbaqian's face darkened, and he subconsciously glanced at the door before turning his head back. Forget it, I'll think about it. What news do you have? Tell me. All right, we've found the lair of the earth spirits, the iron-bespectacled woman said in a cold voice. Zixiao planet was huge. Even from the sky, it took a lot of time to find the location of a race. Renbaqian didn't really care that the other party was imitating Xianjia, and a look of delight appeared on his face. Send me the data. A map appeared in the air, and a point was marked. Renbaqian estimated that it was very far away from the wall between the two worlds, probably in the central and western regions of the outer region. Last time, the Earth spirits had walked for nearly 2 years before reaching their destination. Of course, the other party was advancing with a large army. If there were only a few experts, they would be able to arrive in 2 to 3 months at most. Zoom in to see the details. Following the instructions, the image gradually zoomed in. A large mountain range became larger and larger. Occasionally, a small duck could be seen, but it was an incomparably large ferocious beast. The environment is somewhat similar to the 60,000 mountains. These mountains look like a circle. Renbaqian could tell what was special at a glance. It was as if a pair of large hands had arranged the mountains into a circle, forming a barrier outside. Due to the layers of mountains, it would be difficult to detect if one was there in person, but one could see it at a glance from the sky. Inside, there were countless towering peaks that looked like sharp swords. Sword Forest Barrier. Renbaqian spat out these 3 words. That's right, these peaks in the middle were extremely similar to the Sword Forest Barrier outside the 60,000 mountains. Continue. Renbaqian suppressed these 2 questions to the bottom of his heart. The screen continued to zoom in, and soon, everything became clear. Altars were located on the peaks. There were many earth spirit tribes around the sword peaks. How many Earth spirits are there? There are 22 large settlements, each with a population of 10,000. There are 342 medium-sized settlements, each with a population of 3,000. There are close to 7,000 small settlements, each with a population of 300 to 500. The total number of small settlements is about 400 to 5 million. Regardless of gender or age, all of them can fight. There are more than 2 million combatants, including about 400,000 at the Kismet Heaven level. This is a middle-level race. Rinpoche sighed softly. According to the ratio of these foreign races, there were at least 20,000 Cardinal Heaven experts and 1,000 Longevity Heaven experts. The Earth Spirit had a strange existence that could be ranked among the top of the middle-level races, even if their combat power was lower than their peers. The ratio might be even higher. There were billions of humans, but there were only tens of thousands of Kismet Heaven experts and over 100 Longevity Heaven experts. Rinpoche stared at the image for more than 2 hours before slowly instructing. Calculate a route from the barrier between the two worlds to the territory of the Earth Spirit, and try to avoid those powerful races. I want all the information about the foreign races, especially the wars between them. Rinpoche stared at the picture for more than 2 hours before slowly instructing. Although he wasn't ready yet, he could plan and calculate the route first. Rinpoche then looked at some other pictures and took pictures of all the important cities in the outer regions, including Stainless City. There was also the distribution of the main races in the outer regions. This was a relatively large project, and was expected to take at least a few months to complete. With these things, he would at least have a certain understanding of the situation of the foreign races. In the future, he wouldn't have to make plans and countermeasures without a goal. Now he still had to wait for the progress of the Research Institute on the Earth Spirit. As for the relationship between the foreign races, he might be able to make use of it. Before Rinpoche could lower his head after giving the instructions about the Earth Spirit, he heard a voice. Your Highness, the Yun Nation reported that the city commander of Guang was assassinated, a voice outside the door said. The city commander was assassinated? Rinpoche frowned. The city commander was the lord of a city, and Guang wasn't a small city. It wasn't a small matter for the city commander to be assassinated. Come forward and speak. The city commander of Guang is Lu Xiang, right? Is he dead? Was it done by the remnants of the previous dynasty? There are still remnants? This matter has nothing to do with the remnants of the previous dynasty. What happened? Rinpoche asked. He was in charge of the rearguard commandery, so he was naturally well informed. No matter what happened, it would immediately reach him. There's a martial artist in Guang, called Wuxia, who is quite famous locally. Continue. Rinpoche thought about it but hadn't heard of this name. Wuxia is 26 years old this year, and has the strength of the Earth embryo state. He is handsome and has a reputation for chivalry, so he is very popular. Many people admire him for his chivalry. Rinpoche looked straight ahead and waited for the rest of the story. He was slightly puzzled. Previously, when he went to a restaurant, everyone stood up to respect him. There was a student who treated him as if he didn't exist and talked and was seen by his admirers. After that student left the restaurant, he was stabbed to death in the alley. The city commander of Guang ordered Wuxia to move out of Guang. And if this happened again. After that, the city commander of Guang was assassinated. The person who assassinated the city commander was an admirer of Wuxia. He felt that the city commander couldn't distinguish right from wrong, so he attacked him halfway. The city commander of Guang was seriously injured, and it was already critical when I received the news. If that Wuxia really had a chivalrous act and didn't know anything about this, he should be innocent. Rinpoche shook his head slightly. Since he wasn't a rebel, this was a small matter that wasn't worth spreading to him. However, since it was spread to him, there must be more to it. According to what I heard, the person who assassinated the city commander of Guang was on good terms with Wuxia's younger brother, and had leaked the information to him. Wuxia's younger brother, Wu Jun, was never secretive and would tell Wuxia everything, so he should know about it. Moreover, Wuxia was brave and fierce in his early years, and was often seriously injured or disabled in martial arts competitions. Although he had restrained himself in recent years and often repaid kindness with kindness, he was extremely cruel and often hurt people because of small things. So he knew about it long ago but didn't stop it? Is there any evidence? No, but I dare to swear on my name that everything I said is true. Renbaqian closed his eyes and pondered for a moment. The report from the city commander of Guang. And must be different from what you said, so you specially reported it to me? Your Highness is wise. The city commander of Guang was attacked, and now it's the Jisho who is in charge. That Jisho is old friends with Wuxia, so he naturally wouldn't report the truth. Lu Xiang is from your Lingshan sect, right? Renbaqian snorted. Your Highness is wise. Although Lu Xiang is a disciple of my Lingshan sect, everything I said is true. There is absolutely no falsehood. If what you said is true. Renbaqian's eyes flashed coldly. In recent years, there had been great changes in Dayo. Information was advanced and communication was convenient. With the emergence of local newspapers, television, and the internet, some things that shouldn't exist had also been born. For example, Wuxia had admirers. In fact, he was not the only one. Many martial artists had admirers, especially some young martial artists with outstanding looks and strength. Their admirers were transforming into fan groups on Earth. This wasn't a good sign. In particular, some people would privately instigate these admirers to do certain things. Although they didn't show their faces, they were doing it for their own benefit. If things went wrong, it would cause trouble. This was a suitable opportunity, and they would kill the chicken to warn the monkeys. Only when blood flowed all over the ground could the others learn a lesson. They would know what to do, what not to do, what to touch, and what not to touch. Since they had this reputation, they had to do things that were in line with it. This was what it meant to wear the crown and bear the weight. For example, did Wuxia really think that he would be fine after removing himself from the picture? However, a disciple of your Lingshan sect was actually attacked and killed by an admirer of a practitioner. Your Lingshan sect has been in a mess all these years. The people below suddenly shivered. Please forgive me, Your Majesty. I will send a message to the elders of the sect to seal off the mountain for 3 years, and carefully discipline the disciples. He knew that Renbaqian wasn't referring to the attack on Lu Xiang, but the fact that the Lingshan sect had disciples everywhere and occupied high positions. The person in front of him was a little unhappy. Sealing off the mountain for 3 years was just the beginning. Next, he had to pay attention to the situation of the disciples in the sect. The Lingshan sect had been upholding itself all these years, and he had always been impartial. This was why Her Highness had tolerated him until now. However, if he didn't know what was good for him, he and the entire Lingshan sect would be in trouble. Chapter 1278. Your Highness, the assassination of the Guang and city magistrate has been thoroughly investigated. It was done by Lu Qingqiu from Guang and city, and he has been imprisoned. It has been thoroughly investigated. Did you investigate it thoroughly? Or is it whatever they report? What do you do? What role did that Wuxia play in this? Who investigated it? Or did you not hear anything? Renbaqian's face darkened, and he threw the memorial to the ground. And the Department of Inspection, look at you. How much weight have you gained in the past few years? Can you still run? Can you still investigate the case? You don't even care about such a big case? Do I have to treat you guys? After scolding the officials from the Department of Justice and the Department of Inspection, Renbaqian glanced at Zhu Yan, the Minister of Justice, and snorted. It wasn't just about the case, but also to knock some sense into them. These people had indeed slacked off in the past few years, and Renbaqian had long been dissatisfied. Take it down and see. Renbaqian threw the rearguard commandery's investigation of Wuxia down. Bai Shuriying from the Department of Justice picked it up and read it. This person's crimes are unforgivable. He then threw the file to Tai Yan from the Department of Inspection. Tai Yan remained silent after reading it. In fact, he still didn't understand. The supervision in the country had always been the responsibility of the rearguard commandery. Why was he being scolded? This case has to be dealt with strictly and severely. It has to be set as an example for everyone to see. Let some people know that they shouldn't think that they will be fine just by hiding in the back and throwing themselves out. After court, Renbachian turned a corner and saw Qi Shui running around the courtyard with a red figure on its back. "Why are you so free today?" Renbachian smiled and walked over. Qi Shui braked suddenly and sprayed saliva all over Renbachian's face. "It's too fat." The Empress pointed at Qi Shui with a helpless look on her face. "When we went to the Temple of Heaven, its physical strength wasn't as good as before. If we don't let it move, it won't be able to run anymore." Renbachian wiped his face, looked at the fat version of Qi Shui, and thought of the crow general that was like an enlarged version of an old hen. He nodded. Qi Shui is 630 kilograms, and the crow general is 760 kilograms. Their meat production is indeed not low. Qi Shui was furious. It opened its mouth and spat on Renbachian's face. Seeing that Renbachian was about to dry himself, he followed suit and covered his face with his saliva. He gave Renbachian a bath right away. Men quickly put these away. Qilin's saliva is good stuff. Send it to the research institute. Renbachian didn't mind. Arrange for a plane. The Empress said after laughing for a long time on Qi Shui's back. "I have some good news for you." "Where are you going?" "Mount Liuzue." "All right. I will go with Her Majesty. I have long wanted to see what is in the belly of the mountain." Renbachian immediately agreed. Back then, the late emperor had gone to the belly of Mount Liuzue and returned with serious injuries. After recovering from his injuries, he disappeared without a trace. With the Empress's current strength, it was sufficient for her to explore. "What good news were you going to say just now?" The Empress jumped down from Qi Shui's back and slapped its thigh. Qi Shui sprayed Renbachian again before leaving angrily. "Sure enough, as long as it's a female, you can't say it's fat." Renbachian squinted his eyes and said after Qi Shui left. "How do you know it's female?" "I don't even know. Isn't that simple? Just throw a few surveillance cameras into the water." Renbachian laughed and said, "I came to this conclusion after studying its blood." Then he said, "There is a nest of 6 flood dragons 400 kilometers south of the forward operating base. Doesn't Your Majesty like them? When they are caught, one will be barbecued, one will be braised, and the last one will be steamed." The Empress's eyes narrowed as she heard this. It was a joy that came from the bottom of her heart. This was the purest joy of a foodie. It's indeed good news. But what about the other 3? I sent some dragon bones to the Research Institute previously, and they want a live one as a sample. 5 are for me, and 1 is for you. The Empress raised her chin, and the meaning behind her expression was clear. She was very generous, so why didn't she thank Her Majesty? "I will make the arrangements." Renbachian laughed. A day later, Renbachian looked at the mountain peak that was hidden among the countless trees in the distance and ordered, "Descend." The iron mine at Mount Liuzue had stopped operating long ago, and this place was deserted. The jungle outside had grown even wilder, and the original road couldn't be seen anymore. There were weeds, shrubs, and trees that were only 1 meter in diameter every 20 years. "This is my first time here." The Empress got out of the car, went to the top of the tree, and looked into the distance. "When I was young, I always wondered where my father had gone. However, these thoughts have faded over the years, mainly because there are too many things to do. The crisis brought by the foreign races is even more pressing, so I haven't been here. I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to resist looking for my father after I found out the truth." "In that case, why did you think of coming today?" Renbachian climbed up a branch, and with a thought, a wooden board and a backrest formed on the branch, becoming a chair that grew on the branch. A few small monkeys with big eyes were pointing at the 2 of them and shouting nonstop. "This is a thorn in my heart. The more I don't pull it out, the deeper it will be pierced. Especially after the worship ceremony, I always have this thought in my heart," the Empress said softly with a calm look on her face. Then her voice changed and she said in an imposing manner, "Back then, my father returned with serious injuries. With my strength, I can directly flatten any demons and ghosts." After saying this, the Empress took a step forward. and was already more than 100 meters away. She then stepped on the air step by step. "Your Majesty, wait for me. I will go with you." Renbachian tapped his feet, and with every step he took, a piece of greenwood would appear under his feet. In a short while the Empress arrived in front of Mount Liuzue. It was full of trees and vines, and she couldn't see where the original cave was. She simply raised her hand and casually punched out, causing the whole mountain to tremble. Gravel flew in all directions. Then she punched again. After 2 punches, a hole with a radius of 3 to 4 meters and a depth of more than 70 meters appeared on the mountain wall. The Empress suddenly stopped, snorted, and said, "Sure enough, there is something here." At this moment, even Renbachian felt as if something in the mountain wall had awakened. The Empress adjusted her direction and punched out again. Renbachian felt that Mount Liuzue shook a little. With a loud roar, there was a violent collision diagonally above, and half of the mountain collapsed. Renbachian condensed a water screen and enveloped the two of them, blocking the dust and gravel that filled the sky. Suddenly, he felt that he was pushed by the Empress, and his whole body flew nearly 100 meters away. He saw the Empress's jade-like palm strike forward, and the sound of metal colliding could be heard in the air. Renbachian could see the distortion in the air, as if a sharp knife had slashed on a wall. A low roar came from the belly of the mountain. "Umph!" The Empress snorted and strode toward the belly of the mountain. Renbachian hurriedly followed her, pointed to the sky, and a fireball appeared to illuminate the front. They walked forward for nearly 100 meters, and the space suddenly expanded. The roar became deeper and angrier, as if it was going to explode at any time. Renbachian looked in the direction of the sound with the help of the fireball, and vaguely saw a humanoid figure. Then the figure suddenly disappeared. The Empress also disappeared along with it. There were a few consecutive collisions in the air, and the Empress suddenly appeared in the air, holding a person by the throat with one hand. Renbachian looked at the person that the Empress was holding up. The person was naked, had round ears, and had a furry tail that was trying to break free from the Empress's hand. This figure looked a little familiar. "It looks a little familiar. I think I have seen this figure before." Renbachian frowned. "It does look a little familiar." The Empress nodded. "Where have I seen it before?" Renbachian circled around the two of them, and saw the humanoid creature clearly. It had a ferocious face, and its eyes were full of violence. If it calmed down, it should still be considered delicate, right? Its ears and tail looked very interesting, and he really wanted to touch them. Her figure was not bad. What a lamp! There were actually no stains on her body. Her hair was at least 5 to 6 meters long. "What are you looking at?" The Empress's voice had an ominous tone. "I think this figure is a little familiar," Renbachian said in a deep voice. "Then where are your eyes looking at? Look more clearly, and you might be able to remember." The Empress seemed to be annoyed by the constantly struggling foreign being. She moved and ruthlessly smashed her against the wall. Thump! 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 Clang! The Empress smashed 3 big holes in a row, and the 4th time, she smashed a piece of metal. The Empress found the spot and smashed it more than 10 times in a row. The foreign being finally quieted down, and its eyes turned white. 60,000 mountains. 60,000 mountains. Foreign being. Renbachian didn't know when a chair appeared under him. He rubbed his chin with one hand and kept flipping through his memories. Lin Shaola. Chinchilla. Renbachian slapped his thigh. "It's the chinchilla race, the same race as Lin Shaola. That tail, yes, it's like this. A short tail like a ball." Chapter 1279. He had heard about the chinchillas from his brother-in-law, Qi Ziding. However, he had searched in the direction that Qi Ziding had mentioned many times to no avail. He didn't expect to see one here. "It's indeed a chinchilla." The Empress nodded and frowned. "Do you think the Chinchilla clan is one of the 10,000 clans? Why did Father Emperor come back with serious injuries? This chinchilla is at least at the mid-level of the longevity heaven. If it wants to take Father's life, Father will never be able to leave." Even though the Empress was able to take down the chinchilla in 2 moves, that was only because the disparity in strength between them was too great. The previous 2 emperors were no match for this chinchilla. At present, the White Lotus Society hasn't heard any news about the chinchillas in Stainless City. Renbachian shook his head slightly. The chinchillas puzzled him. Let's wake her up and we'll know. She has already gone crazy and lost her rationality. The Empress was more sensitive than Renbachian. In just a short exchange of blows, she had already discovered the problem with this chinchilla. Even if she's crazy, we have to find a way to wake her up. The chinchilla race is definitely related to that door. As long as she's awake, we'll have a huge harvest, Renbachian immediately said. The fireball on his fingertip grew larger and gradually expanded the illumination area. Renbachian tapped on the communication device beside his ear. No response. The signal is blocked. Let's wait for them to find us. Let me see what's here first. The mountainside was huge, comparable to 2 football fields. There are some plants here that haven't matured yet. They might be her food. The quantity is very small, so it's not a staple food. The staple food should be moss or mushrooms. There's no smell of feces. Maybe she doesn't need it, or she only excretes once in a long time, so the smell has dissipated. There's a spring, and there should be an underground river underneath. As Renbachian walked, he softly explained what he had observed. There are many claw marks here, and it's very messy. Before she went crazy, she must have suffered a lot of pain, loneliness, and despair. However, with her strength she should be able to leave at any time. So why did she stay here? What was she guarding? Or are you waiting for something? At this point, Renbachian's voice rose a little, revealing his excitement. A moment later, Renbachian's joyful voice came from the belly of the mountain. Found it. It's very likely that this is what she's guarding. What? The Empress saw 2 balls of light approaching from afar. One was a ball of light, the other was a bald head. The Empress always felt that the bald head was brighter. This disc is embedded in a pillar in the deepest part of the palace. I have checked it, and there's nothing wrong with the pillar. It's only used for storage. Renbachian walked over with a stone disc in his hands. The disc was about 40 centimeters in size, and a hexagonal gem was inlaid in the middle. The edges of the gem were engraved with lines. What's on it? It should be their language. As for the function of this gem, we need to examine it to be sure. I can feel that it contains some kind of power, similar to the feeling of highly concentrated origin crystals. I've checked inside. This stone plate should be the most important one. We need to wake her up to find out the specifics. Soon the people behind him found him. Check this place a few more times. Don't miss anything. Bring everything back for inspection. Don't miss even a single blade of grass. Take samples of the soil and stones in the cave back for analysis. Take away all the metals. After Renbachian gave his instructions, the Empress pinned the chinchilla against the wall again. After confirming that it had lost its ability to resist, she threw it to someone else. This trip came and went quickly, but it didn't resolve the doubts in the Empress's heart. The next day, Renbachian asked someone to find Lin Xiaola. Awu. Lin Xiaola yawned as she walked into the hall. She was wearing a simple t-shirt and denim shorts that revealed her long legs. What surprised Renbachian was her hairstyle. It turned out to be a bowl cut with a short top. Who shaved it for you? Renbachian couldn't help but ask. Why? That's good. I don't have to wash my hair every time I wake up. Why are you looking for me? I'm still sleepy. Renbachian sighed. This girl really lived and died in her sleep. She couldn't sleep for a lifetime. Also, how dirty are you? You even find it troublesome to wash your hair? Are you about to reach adulthood? I don't know. Lin Xiaola was at a loss when this question was raised. Forget it. Wait for me to finish my work. Come with me to meet someone later. Oh, Lin Xiaola responded. She leaned against the wall with her arms folded, and her snoring could be heard in less than 3 minutes. When they arrived at the research institute, Renbachian listened to the report and said, "Let's see the one we brought back yesterday." It was a small one-way glass room with a chair in the middle. The chinchilla was tied to the chair and kept struggling. Fortunately, the chair was welded to the floor, and the floor of the room was made of a large piece of steel. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been easy to tie it up. The chinchilla had a ferocious expression, blood-red eyes, two sharp teeth protruding from the side of its mouth, and its nose was constantly puffing white gas. Take a look. Rinpoche gestured to Lin Xiala without saying much as he wanted to see her reaction. Rinpoche remembered that Lin Xiala inherited her genes. Perhaps she would remember something when she saw this chinchilla. Lin Xiala looked at the blinding headlights of the other party, and then looked down at herself. She felt a wave of heartache. She pouted. So ugly. Rinpoche was confused. Don't you have any other thoughts? Did you send me here to let me know that I don't have the ability to breastfeed my offspring? Lin Xiala felt very wronged. Have you forgotten that I protected you with all my might? Rinpoche was confused. Do you King know what you are talking about? Rinpoche really wanted to press her head and smash her to the ground. He let out a few long breaths and finally stopped himself from exploding. She's from the same race as you, the chinchilla race. Oh. Rinpoche was helpless. Was this the only reaction from this girl? However, when he turned to look at Lin Xiala, he realized that she was staring blankly at the beast lady who was tied to the chair in the room. It seemed like she didn't have any reaction, just that she couldn't react in time. She was already this old when the Empress was young, but now, Honeysuckle was older than her. Although she always looked like she couldn't wake up and seemed to be carefree, she probably had her own thoughts. She has lost her consciousness, and we are trying to find a way to wake her up, Rinpoche said. She has returned to a Pukin. This is just a body, and we need to bring her consciousness back from a Pukin, Lin Xiala suddenly said. What did you say? Rinpoche turned his head in surprise. He was just trying to comfort Lin Xiala, and didn't expect her to say such a thing. Lin Xiala repeated herself. How do you know? I just know. It seems like it should be like this. Rinpoche frowned. If this was a genetic inheritance, it meant that this situation was common among chinchillas. In other words, Lin Xiala would also experience this kind of situation. It was just like when Lin Xiala lost her consciousness in the 60,000 mountains. How do we bring her back to consciousness? Rinpoche asked. Jingyuhua. What kind? Men, bring me the plant samples we brought back from the cave. After a while, Lin Xiala pointed to a plant in a petri dish and said, This should be this. It takes 100 years to mature, and the fruit it bears can bring her consciousness back. Rinpoche understood at a glance that it was the small cluster of plants that he thought was the chinchilla's food. It seemed like the fruit of this plant could maintain the chinchilla's consciousness. How long will it take for this to mature? Rinpoche asked. At present, its growth rate is about 60%. If it takes 100 years to mature, it will take 40 years. However, after studying and analyzing the characteristics of this plant, we can try to accelerate its growth. Let's see if the crystals work. After staying at the research institute for 2 hours, Lin Xiala remained silent until they got into the car. After getting into the car, Lin Xiala suddenly said, If she wakes up, can the two of us mate? The driver in front almost kicked the car into the wall. Rinpoche almost choked on her words. Lin Xiala continued. Two of the same species can mate, reproduce, and expand the population. In nature, a litter is 6 to 10. Considering that chinchillas are relatively strong, it is very likely that a litter will only have 1 or 2 litters. Based on Her Majesty's 3-year gestation period, the population can expand to 5 to 8 in 10 years. Where did you hear this from? The veins on Rinpoche's forehead popped. Erhua said it. She said that reproduction is the instinct of life and the only way to continue and expand the population. That chinchilla is a female, and so are you. 2 females can't reproduce. Rinpoche gritted his teeth and wondered if he should fry meat with 1 or 2 steel bars when he got back. Chapter 1280. After suffering a beating, Erhua's eyes were filled with tears and he felt wronged. Stop pretending. I know you have thick skin and won't hurt even if I beat you. Rinpoche sat by the side and sipped his tea. Lin Xiala isn't an adult yet and has an innocent temperament. You should stop doing useless things in the future. Besides, you're always talking to people about mating and reproduction. What's wrong with that? She's older than my mother. According to what you said, animal world should be banned too. Thump. Tisk tsk, let her finish. Renbachian squinted his eyes and looked at the Empress whose veins were popping out. I reckon that she sensed your presence and took the opportunity to escape after taking a kick from you. If you don't believe me, you can chase after her and take a look. Maybe she's still snickering. Anyway, she has thick skin and won't be affected by a few kicks. Renbachian put the teacup on the table and smacked his lips. You're even worse than Hua when it comes to scheming. Bang! Someone go and inform them to fix the wall tomorrow. The Empress went out with a cold face. By tomorrow, the 2 holes in the wall would disappear without a trace. The craftsmen in the palace were world-class in repairing walls and repairing old materials. Even on Earth, they would be the best in the industry when it came to patching the wall without leaving any traces. Renbachian rolled on the ground and pondered. The Empress was in a bad mood today. Forget it. He would go back and collect all kinds of tranquilizers to see if there were any that would be effective on chinchillas. Your Highness, we would like to ask Miss Lin to cooperate with us in some experiments. Oh, what did you find? Renbachian was interested when he heard this request. The person cleared his throat and said, after using various tranquilizers, we found that some psychotropic tranquilizers have some effects when used in large doses. They can reduce the target's aggressiveness, which pointed out the direction of our research. After research, we found that the target's dopamine is too high, reaching 700 times that of a human's. We suspect that this is the reason why the other party has lost its mind. Therefore, we need Miss Lin to cooperate with us in some experiments. Dopamine. Renbachian's mind flashed with information about dopamine and said, we can try to stimulate Lin Xiaola with various scenarios and see if she can obtain more information from her genetic information. I'll have someone take her to the lab tomorrow. I hope to see the results as soon as possible. After Renbachian finished speaking, he looked at the other person and asked, what results do you have? We discovered a weakness of the earth spirits. Speak. Renbachian's interest grew. The chinchilla was very important, but the earth spirit was equally important. We did an experiment. We divided the earth spirits into a few groups and placed them in the same room with different creatures. We wanted to see how they affected the animals. This included canines, elephants, pigs, felines, and other earth spirits' mounts. However, there was an unexpected discovery. The earth spirit clan was most intimate with felines, and it could be said that they had no resistance against it. When we take the cubs away from them, they react very strongly. Our guess is that the feline cubs are extremely similar to the earth spirit cubs, and that's why they feel empathy for them. According to tests, when they spend time with cat cubs, their dopamine levels are quite high, and they are more likely to feel satisfied. Dopamine again. Today's 2 pieces of news are related to dopamine. I didn't expect those earth spirits to be cat lovers. Renbachian laughed. What is the weakness that you mentioned? We just call it the dopamine of the earth spirits. In fact, it's slightly different from dopamine, but its effects are very similar. The earth spirits will be infected by the FIV virus carried by felines. This virus can lower the immune system of cats, and it's similar to AIDS. However, AIDS can only be transmitted to humans, while FIV can only be transmitted to cats. Now there's another target, the earth spirits. Moreover, this FIV virus will mutate in the earth spirits and produce a blocking effect that slows down the regeneration rate of the earth spirits, and even causes them to lose their ability to regenerate. Oh. Renbachian was really surprised when he heard this. After pondering for a moment, Renbachian asked, is their regenerative ability related to their immunity? The current evidence shows that there's at least an indirect connection. According to our speculation, there may be a link in the middle that we haven't discovered. I need more. You guys have to speed up. I'm here to apply for funds and manpower. In addition, the number of Earth spirit samples is small, and 2 have died due to the FIV virus. We need more samples. Especially the Earth spirit samples who are weaker than longevity heaven. The Earth spirit is too far away from here. It's impossible to have new samples for at least 2 years, Renbachian said directly. He had no other way to deal with this matter. How does FIV spread? Mainly through bites. This is too slow. I need a faster method of transmission. Add a separate FIV virus research lab and place it on the outskirts of Mount Beginning. I'll transfer manpower to you later. After the heads of the two laboratories left, Renbachian thought for a moment. Bites spread too slowly. Even after 10 years, it would be difficult for the number of infections to exceed 10% of the Earth spirit population. It was only suitable for a long time, but unfortunately, it didn't last that long. Only a simpler and more convenient transmission method could effectively weaken the Earth spirit and formulate a plan based on it. However, some things had to be prepared early. There were felines in this world, but there were no small cats. Most of them were big felines that were more than 3 meters long. He also had to bring back a batch of cats from Earth to breed. After that, everything was carried out step by step. 3 months later, bad news arrived. A coalition of 5,000 people, including 500 longevity heaven experts, was mobilized by Stainless City to encircle the human experts in the territory of the Flint Rock race. The 8-arm race wasn't like the Earth Spirit, which had high abilities but low martial arts. They also didn't have obvious weaknesses like the Flint Rock race. This coalition of more than 10 8-arm race settlements immediately put a lot of pressure on Li Fu, Li Yuanzhu, and the others. Even with the help of various long-range reconnaissance equipment, they were almost surrounded. The Empress had no choice but to rush to the front line in advance to stabilize the situation. The most important thing now is to stall for time and not fight recklessly. Once you encounter them, escape as soon as possible. If you encounter danger, cut off your tail. Renbachian exhorted before she left. Try not to expose your strength. If they know that the humans have experts like you, Stainless City won't be able to sit still. At that time, what awaits us will be the most tragic encirclement. I understand. Remember, take good care of my dragons. I'll find trouble with you if one of them dies. The Empress was a little resentful. They had caught 5 of the dragons from the nest that they had discovered a few months ago, and were on their way back. They wanted to eat them before leaving, but that wasn't possible now. Perhaps when you come back, not only will there be no fewer, but there might even be more. Renbachian laughed. Do you want me to stay there for 8 to 10 years? So that you can hug them from behind? The Empress was furious when she heard this. What are you thinking about? We ran to 2 before and found another nest by following the route they took. Renbachian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Besides, who told you that the flood dragon reproduction device only lasts 8 to 10 years? Great Xia has been raising them for hundreds of years, and there are only a few of them. The Empress's expression brightened at first and then darkened. Even if they found another nest, she wouldn't be able to eat them in a short period of time. Chapter 1281. This cup of wine is a toast to young Master Wu, but I have never had the chance to meet you. Now that I have seen you, it seems that hearing about you is not as good as meeting you in person. A woman in red said to a handsome young man with watery eyes and a smile. Speaking of which, Miss Yun has also wanted to meet young Master Wu several times. Today, she finally lived up to her expectations and invited young Master Wu out. A young man next to her laughed. In a restaurant in Guang'an City, there was a hubbub of voices. You are too polite. Wu Xian raised his cup. While toasting, Wu Xian drank a few cups of wine, and the atmosphere became even more lively. Especially the woman in red, whose eyes were full of admiration, made Wu Xian feel good. As they talked, they mentioned the assassinated Guang and city magistrate Lu Xiang. After all, this was the biggest event in the past few days. At first, everyone was still somewhat worried, but not long after, the main culprit was caught, and Wu Xian was not affected at all. This also let many people see Wu Xian's means. Speaking of that city magistrate, what does the scholar's murder have to do with young Master Wu? Why did he have to be so meddlesome? What happened to him in the end? Heaven has eyes, but it is a pity for young Master Lu. Someone said with some regret. The so-called young Master Lu was Lu Qingqiu who assassinated Lu Xiang. Speaking of this, it was also because of me. I am sorry, young Master Lu. In the future, young Master Lu's parents and brothers will be my parents and brothers. I will definitely bear the responsibility. Wu Xian said in a powerful voice. There was another round of compliments. Wuxian listened to the compliments of the crowd and felt a burst of satisfaction in his heart. He wanted to use these people to spread his reputation of being generous. Thinking of Lu Qingqiu, Wuxian felt a little uneasy, but shook his head slightly and threw the matter out of his mind. It was all Lu Qingqiu's doing. What did it have to do with him? Sounds like a really good person. A young woman's voice sounded by the window. The compliments in the room suddenly fell silent, and everyone looked towards the window in disbelief. Wuxian's hair stood on end, and he suddenly turned his head, only to see a delicate girl in an emerald green dress sitting on the windowsill, swinging her legs. She was about 17 or 18 years old, with a faint smile on her face. None of the people present knew how she had appeared there. "Who are you?" Someone's expression changed as he questioned. The girl looked at them in surprise, and then began to look around the room. She said casually, "I'm not sure what to do." "You have no right to ask." He did not put anyone in his eyes at all. Even though her appearance was strange and unfathomable, her words caused quite a few people to feel anger in their hearts. They even felt that it was absurd. It had to be known that the people here were either disciples of great clans or geniuses like Wu Xian who were famous throughout the province. "We're not qualified to ask?" Good. "Although I don't know how you came here, I know you can't leave." "Men, take her down first before we talk. I'd like to see if there's anyone in Guang, and that I'm not qualified to ask." The one who spoke was Xian, a disciple of the Xie family of Guang. The Xie family had a great reputation within 1,000 miles. No matter where they went, they were respected and flattered. He did not expect that today a girl of unknown origin would say that he was not qualified. He was so angry that he laughed. Wu Xian's eyes flickered, but he didn't say anything. This girl's appearance was strange and unpredictable, so it would be great if someone else was willing to measure her. "I heard that you're cruel and tyrannical, but I didn't expect you to be so tolerant." The girl looked at Wu Xian and sneered. She shook her head and said, "You're cruel and tyrannical to those who can't beat you. If you're not confident, just shrink your head back." "Men." Xian frowned and shouted again, looking at the girl in front of him who did not take them seriously at all, and thinking that no one came in when he shouted just now. He suddenly felt a little uneasy. Wu Xian's face was wild with anger. He pressed his palm, and a piece of wood under his hand was immediately crushed into powder. "Young Master Xie, no need to shout." Wu Xian stood up and said, "Since you're here for me, don't hide your head and show your tail. I told you, you're not qualified to ask." The girl stretched. "I just want to see who on earth is so bold." "Boring." The girl's indifferent tone made them even angrier, especially the disdain in her words, which almost made Wu Xian explode. "You're courting death," Wu Xian shouted. His palm turned red, and he slapped at the girl. This palm could even smash a boulder into powder, and the others felt the heat coming from it. The few of them hurriedly retreated. They saw that the palm was about to hit the girl, but she didn't even bat an eyelid. "You're courting death, don't blame others," Wu Xian thought, and his face revealed a trace of malevolence. However, before his thoughts dispersed, he saw a beam of light in the darkness behind the girl. A beam of sword light. Like lightning, it was dazzling in the dark night. Wu Xian, who was originally charging forward, felt his hair stand on end, and he retreated frantically. He felt that if he took another step forward, he would die. Who was it? Who was it? Such a fast sword? Wu Xian broke out in a cold sweat, but he heard a patah sound. He subconsciously looked in the direction of the sound, and saw a hand falling to the ground. Wu Xian looked at the familiar hand in disbelief, and then he raised his wrist. Only then did he feel the intense pain, and he groaned. He could still endure the pain of losing a hand, but his heart sank to the bottom of an abyss. With just one sword, he didn't even realize that the other party had cut off his hand. If the other party wanted his life, Wu Xian's eyes were filled with disbelief and fear, and the eyes of the others were filled with shock and fear. Wu Xian was already a famous master, but he couldn't even take one sword. Who was that girl? And who was in the darkness? The girl shook her head in a rather bored manner. She didn't move, but she suddenly disappeared from the windowsill. Just like when she appeared, mysterious and unfathomable. Only a faint voice came. You guys deal with it. Yes. Someone in the courtyard said respectfully. Bang! The door was kicked open, and two men in embroidered robes walked in from outside the door. They looked at them, and one of them waved his hand. Take them down. When the people in the room saw the clothes of the two men, their expressions suddenly changed. The rear guard commandery. The fiercest dog under His Highness. Why did you capture me? Wuxian's face turned pale, and he gritted his teeth. In fact, the moment he saw them, he understood, but he still didn't give up. Not to capture you, but to capture you. The man in front sneered. The few people's faces turned pale. Sir, the man sneered. I don't know whether to say that you are blind, or that you are bold. You don't even recognize His Highness, and you still dare to attack His Highness. Do you still want to live? His Highness. Hearing these two words, the people in the room almost lost their balance, and their legs went soft, and they almost fell. Especially Xian, who was completely paralyzed. There were only two people who could be called by this word. One was the ruling king, and the other was the current princess. Finally, someone realized what the girl's surprised look meant. The few of them were really blind. Under the moonlight, an emerald green figure jumped from one roof to another. Looking at its movements, it looked like a child jumping out of a plane. Li Dai. Qi Yuqing suddenly said. Your Highness. I'll find you a wife. Which one do you like? Qi Yuqing suddenly turned around and said. Li Dai was at a loss for a long time, and then he shook his head fiercely. Wherever His Highness is, I'll be there. I don't want anything else. If His Highness must reward me, you can give me a few sword manuals. You're so boring. Qi Yuqing twitched the corner of her mouth. She wanted to tease this machine-like subordinate, but his reaction made her feel a little bored. There are so many interesting things in the world. You should try more. Li Dai was silent. For the first 20 years of his life, the sword was everything. In the future, His Highness was the most important, and the sword was second. Chapter 1282. In the early morning of Guang, a thin mist permeated the streets. Many people had already left their homes to buy some food before heading to work. The Lu's kanji shop at the corner of the street was the most popular shop in the area, because of the large screen hanging above. For ordinary people, a television was still a luxury. Many people would come here in the morning to eat breakfast and watch the news. Yesterday, His Royal Highness gave an important speech when he went to the capital 6th high school. He pointed out that the more time passes, the more important knowledge and talents are, and the more important the status and role of education is. I believe whatever His Royal Highness says. If His Royal Highness says education is important, I'll make sure my eldest son goes to college even if I have to sell everything I have. How's your eldest son's studies? Second from the bottom in class. A proud voice said. How can he go to college? If he can't get in, I'll break his legs and let him continue studying at home. I'm not afraid of raising him forever. Thanks to His Royal Highness, we would be lucky if we could eat our fill 20 years ago. We wouldn't have the life we have now. His Royal Highness brought us all this. Now that His Royal Highness says knowledge is important, I must make sure my son goes to college. Some people who were eating breakfast were watching the news and discussing it. In a corner of the Lu's kanji shop, Honeysuckle sat there in a long emerald dress, the corners of her mouth slightly raised. Listening to these people talk is quite interesting. Guang's accent is quite interesting. There was a pile of bowls beside her. If it wasn't for the sword on Li Dai's back and the unapproachable aura, Honeysuckle's appearance would have attracted a lot of attention. Even so, many people were sneaking glances at Honeysuckle. They had never seen such a beautiful girl in Guang'an. Don't you want to know what I'm doing here? Honeysuckle started to chat with Li Dai out of boredom. I'll be wherever His Royal Highness is. After saying this, Li Dai continued to look down. Tell me, are you made of wood? You look like you're made of clay, or wood every day. Whatever His Royal Highness says. Honeysuckle's face twitched. It was too difficult to talk to Li Dai. She really wanted to slap him to the wall. Back then, when my father was celebrating the Queen Mother's birthday, he used more than 600 photos to make a half-body photo of the Queen Mother. He even drew a treasure map on the back and said, "Do you want the treasure? It's right there, one piece, ahem, right on the treasure map. After that, I will distribute the photos to all parts of Dayo." Although Li Dai didn't say anything, his ears moved. Honeysuckle finally felt that the guy in front of him wasn't really a piece of wood. "I asked Royal Father what the hidden treasure was, but Royal Father didn't tell me. If he doesn't tell me, I'll go and take a look myself. After so many years, I've collected almost 400 pieces. There's a person called Lu Qing here. In his early years, he was an assistant minister of the Ministry of Rights in the Yun Nation. Later, the Yun Nation was gone and he came back to retire. I heard that he secretly collected more than 100 of them. With these, I might be able to figure it out." "This man deserves to die," Li Dai suddenly said. Honeysuckle looked at him in surprise. "An official from the previous dynasty racked his brains to find your highness's treasure. Who would believe that he had no other intentions? He would rather kill the wrong person than let him go." Li Dai's eyes were full of killing intent. "You can use your brain occasionally." Honeysuckle smiled and looked at him with admiration. "However, there are many people with ulterior motives. They can't cause much trouble." Honeysuckle waved her hand indifferently. She was very clear about the technological gap between Dayo and Earth. It wasn't something that could be caught up in a short period of 20 to 30 years. Even with Earth's technology as a reference, Dayo still had to walk its own path. As for the others, they were even further behind. If they hadn't studied in Dayo, a book called New Concept Physics course would be enough for them to study for 80 to 100 years. It's not convenient for me to do this. If I do, it will be using my power to oppress others. It won't be good if word gets out." Honeysuckle added, "You will handle it in a while." "Yes. Do you know what to do?" "Just rush in and press the sword against the neck." Li Dai's method was simple and brutal. "Sure enough." Honeysuckle twitched her mouth and smiled. "That works too. Cover your face and change your sword. Otherwise, they will know it's you." "Okay." Li Dai put the broken sword on the table, turned around and left. After an hour, Li Dai returned and placed a wooden box on the table. "Did it go well?" Honeysuckle smiled as she took the box, opened it, and closed it again. "I cut off 2 of his son's fingers," Li Dai said expressionlessly. "You don't have to tell me about this." Honeysuckle waved her hand. "Let's go back." Li Dai nodded and made up his mind to only talk about the results and not the process next time. Honeysuckle brought Li Dai back to the capital. She stayed in her room for a day and went out again. 7 days later, Honeysuckle returned to the capital. Now that 20 years had passed, most people had already given up. The remaining photos were in the hands of a few people, which saved her a lot of effort. "Haha, I finally found the location." 2 days later, a triumphant cheer came from Honeysuckle's palace. "So what if you didn't tell me? I still found it, didn't I? I want to see what you are hiding." At this time, there were more than 600 photos on the ground in the palace. Except for a few empty ones, the rest had been collected by her. There was also a stack of high-definition satellite images at the side. After comparing for 2 days, the dozen or so guards finally found the location of the hidden treasure, and their eyes were about to blink. "It's not far from Lawn City. Someone prepare the carriage." When Honeysuckle left the palace in a hurry, Rinpochian had already received the news. "This girl." Rinpochian smiled and shook his head. He thought of something and was a little distracted. If Honeysuckle hadn't mentioned the hidden treasure, he would have forgotten about it. However, the location of the hidden treasure was very meaningful to him. It was the place where he first appeared in this world. At that time, he was just a social animal who had just graduated from university. He was scared half to death when someone put a knife to his neck, and his mind was filled with thoughts of how to survive. Later on, he just wanted to make some money. He didn't expect the things that happened later. It was rare for Rinpochian to put down his work and sit there in a daze for more than an hour before he came back to his senses. He smiled, picked up the booklet, and continued reading. That girl will be pleasantly surprised. It's such a big box. How many things are hidden in it? Even with a map, Honeysuckle still spent a day to find the exact location. After digging more than 4 meters deep, she found a wooden box that was 1 meter wide. After opening the box, there were layers of waterproof cloth. Honeysuckle chased the others to one side and excitedly opened all of them. What appeared in front of Honeysuckle was 2018 edition of mathematics textbooks from primary school to university, physics and chemistry textbooks from junior high school to university, Romance of the Three Kingdoms, Investiture of the Gods, Journey to the West. There was also a note. If you learn mathematics, physics, and chemistry well, you don't have to be afraid to travel the world. Honeysuckle was stunned for a long time like a groundhog. That's it? I spent more than a year just for this. Chapter 1283. Ha 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 ha. Renbachian burst into laughter when he saw Honeysuckle shouting like a groundhog in the video. Honeysuckle brought many guards with him, so his every move was under Renbachian's control. Even the video was sent back. He didn't expect that the things he came up with on a whim would end up harming his own daughter. However, it wasn't a problem since she was his own daughter. Who else would he harm if not her? However, he didn't expect things to develop to such a state. If he didn't develop Dayo to such a state, someone could really make a career out of these books. Is your highness very happy? Exionja, who was wearing a helmet and armor, heard Renbachian's laughter from outside the hall. She walked in, cupped her fists, and greeted him expressionlessly. In fact, she was very happy to see Renbachian so happy. Her highness had been working too hard all these years. Others didn't know, but she knew that her highness would be busy until midnight every day and rarely had any free time. However, she didn't know how to express herself and always acted like she didn't mean it. Don't be so serious. Smile more. Look at this. Jiang Yunhe waved his hand and played the video again. The scene from that time appeared in the air. Honeysuckle opened the box expectantly and opened the outer package. Then he widened his eyes and looked sluggish. He then shouted angrily like a groundhog. Even Exionja couldn't help but smile when she saw this scene. In her heart, the most important people were the Empress and Prince Yu, followed by Honeysuckle. She had watched Honeysuckle grow up. Her highness seems to be very angry. Renbachian laughed even more happily. This little episode put Renbachian in a good mood, and he quickly picked up the memorials from various places to read and comment on them from time to time. The memorials from various places could only be sent to him after being reviewed by the imperial court. Those messy memorials were all swept away. For example, a casual chat. The fish from Lake Wu is very delicious. There are few bones, and the meat is tender and delicious. It's been a long time since I've had an audience with your highness. How about I personally celebrate your highness's birthday in Diendu next month? For example, a random chat. I went to a brothel yesterday. The girls are very beautiful. Do you want to see them, your highness? Or a request for money. Willow City is very good. Everything is good, but we lack money. We need to allocate funds to set up factories and create more jobs. There were even those who complained. Yesterday, when the Peace City's mayor was discussing the matter of the joint development of the two cities, the Peace City's mayor was insolent and smashed 3 of my chairs with his head. They were all made of good wood. Yesterday, I was discussing some matters with the Calm Cloud City magistrate, but the Calm Cloud City magistrate was very rude. He threw a chair at me and broke 3 chairs. The doctor said that I need to stay in bed for a week to recover. Most of the memorials were this sort of nonsense. However, Dayo was too big. Even if he removed the messy ones, he still had to deal with a lot of memorials every day. Not to mention, he still had to control the direction and results of the various laboratories, as well as the situation with the foreign races. Your Highness, there's good news from the Research Institute, someone reported shortly afterwards. Speak. Renbachian's interest was piqued. He put down the booklet in his hand and looked up. Exionja continued to stand at the side. The laboratory said that Chinchilla's consciousness is showing signs of recovery. Renbachian's eyes lit up, and he revealed a hearty smile. It is indeed great news. Exionja, make the arrangements and set off immediately. Yes. Also bring Lin Xiaola here. Yes. An hour later, Renbaqian arrived at the research institute with Lin Xiaola, who was wearing glasses and couldn't even open her eyes. What's the situation? Bring me to take a look. Renbaqian didn't waste any time, got out of the car and walked inside. Thanks to the cultivation fluid data that Your Highness brought back, there has been considerable progress in the research on the Jing Jade flower. At present, there are already 3 Jing Jade flowers that have reached maturity. As previously speculated, this Jing Jade flower has a great effect on the recovery of the chinchilla race's consciousness. Previously, Renbaqian brought the plants and seeds of the Jing Jade flower back to Earth. After all, there was an advantage in having a different timeline on Earth. Eventually, he obtained a nutrient solution made from crystals and other materials, which could greatly shorten the growth cycle of the Jing Jade flower. Now he was finally seeing returns. How clear-headed are you? This was the question that Renbaqian was most concerned about. The chinchilla race was very secretive, but the implications were huge. As long as she regained consciousness, Renbaqian felt that he could get a lot of valuable information from her. She has been unconscious for too long, and even the Jing Jade flower can't make her recover immediately. However, everything is changing for the better. Now her aggressiveness has almost disappeared. Although she is still a little sluggish, according to our observations, she is gradually recovering, and there is a high possibility that she will completely regain her consciousness. If everything goes well, she will really wake up in a few days. Let's go and take a look. Renbaqian saw the chinchilla again. She was now wearing a white robe, and her limbs were fixed to a chair. The sharp teeth that originally protruded from her mouth had shrunk by more than half, and were only slightly longer than a human's canine teeth. However, her ears and tail hadn't changed much. Presumably, these were the physical signs of an adult chinchilla. Just as the person in charge said, her aggressiveness from before had disappeared. She sat there in a daze and didn't respond even when a few people came. Has she become a fool? Lin Xiaola finally perked up. She circled around the chinchilla a few times with a worried look on her face. It wasn't easy to meet someone of the same race as her, but it turned out to be a fool. It's just a temporary condition. She has been insane for too long and needs some time to recover. The person in charge emphasized again. Lin Xiaola had been dozing off along the way and didn't hear what the others said. Now she was pleasantly surprised and asked, "She can still recover? I can still talk to her?" This is also what I wanted to say. If someone of the same race is around, it will be very beneficial for her recovery. I hope that Miss Lin can stay here for a few days and talk to her every day. It is best to use the language of your race, or let her feel something familiar. Lin Xiaola turned to look at Jiang Yunhe. Anyway, you are going to sleep wherever you are. Talk to her when you wake up. Renbaqian waved his hand. The problem is, what is the language of my race? Lin Xiaola had a blank look on her face. Renbaqian was speechless. You don't have any of it in your inherited memories? A little. I only know a few words. Just say whatever you know. No matter what, you are of the same race. When she wakes up and sees you, I believe she will be a lot more relaxed. Renbaqian sighed. Oh. Lin Xiaola didn't care where she was going to sleep. She just felt a little lost and didn't know what to do. Take good care of them, and inform me when they regain their sanity. After a while, Renbaqian flipped through the report and looked at Jing Yuhua's condition. This plant wasn't only useful for chinchillas, but also for other creatures. It could make other creatures enter a state of madness, which was the exact opposite of the effect on chinchillas. Not only can it make other creatures crazy, but it can also increase the strength of other creatures in a short period of time. As long as the side effects of going crazy and losing their sanity are minimized, it will be very useful. You can research in this direction. Renbaqian concluded. 3 days later. Your Highness, there is news from the Research Institute that the chinchillas have completely regained their sanity. Renbaqian had just left the court session when someone informed him. Can they communicate? Prepare the carriage. Chapter 1284. How's her condition now? She has eaten more than a ton of meat since she woke up, and we haven't had the chance to ask her anything yet. the person in charge of the research institute said as he followed behind Rinpoche. She was too weak previously, so eating this food only replenished her body's energy deficit. In addition, we used some medicine to block her vitality, so her strength can only be restored to below the cardinal heaven level. On the other side of Rinpoche was Xianjia. Although she was expressionless, she was curious about Lin Xiaola's kind. She has a good appetite. Rinpoche smiled. It was unknown how long the other party had been starving in that cave, relying solely on some plants and moss to survive. However, those things were nothing more than a snack for an expert. The fact that he hadn't starved to death after so many years showed that his strength wasn't shallow. The Empress easily took her down, which was why she had been starving for thousands of years and lost her mind. According to some research on her body, she was an expert who had reached that level at her peak. Before the Empress returned, she couldn't be allowed to regain her strength, or else no one would be able to control her. When they came to an observation room, they could see Chinchilla sitting on the bed through the glass. In front of him was a table filled with plates of meat. At this time, Chinchilla's eyes were filled with the word hungry. It grabbed a fist-sized piece of meat with its hand and stuffed it into its mouth, swallowing it in 2 bites. Lin Xiaola was paralyzed with a bulging stomach. Obviously, she couldn't compare to her kind in terms of appetite. According to our estimates, she should be close to full, but she doesn't seem to have any intention of stopping. It should be because hunger left too deep in her memory. She was still in a muddle-headed state before, but now that she is awake, she can't control herself. Let's go in after she finishes eating, Rinpoche said nonchalantly. A creature that had lived on moss and small amounts of plants for thousands of years wouldn't be stuffed to death no matter how much she ate. After a while, the bucket of meat in the room disappeared completely. Chinchilla looked up at the door. However, when the door opened again, no food was sent in. Instead, a bald, sturdy young man with shiny metallic skin walked in. A valiant aura hit Rinpoche in the face. Of course, this valiant aura only applied to ordinary people. I'm glad to see that you have regained consciousness. Rinpoche walked into the room. Someone moved a chair behind him, and he sat down. He then pointed at Lin Xiaola and said, "She is a member of your race, and also a good friend of me, my wife, and my daughter. I think our human race and your race can also establish such a friendship." Lin Xiaola nodded repeatedly to prove that what he said was true. In fact, to her, her fellow clansmen were far less important than Rinpoche, Qi Zixiao, and Qi Yuqing. But for the Chinchillas, Lin Xiaola was the best bridge. The other party could also see that Lin Xiaola was living a good life with the humans. What if it wasn't good? He definitely couldn't just eat and sleep all day and still have a silly personality. Do you know the common language? How should I address you? When Miaoli woke up, Chinchilla, on the other hand, was very calm. She was completely different from Lin Xiaola's simple-minded appearance. There was no hostility. Can you tell me why you were in that cave? It looks like you've been there for a long time, while your people are in another area. Miaoli's eyes lit up. Do you know where my people are? She glanced at the paralyzed Lin Xiaola and said, "Not this little fellow. You only know the general area? Someone has encountered them, but I don't know their exact location. Perhaps you can go and find them yourself. The astrolabe has fallen into your hands, right?" Miaoli asked calmly. It was impossible to tell that she had guarded the astrolabe for thousands of years. From her and Lin Xiaola, Rinpoche felt that the Chinchillas had good personalities. Even if it were a human, they would probably fight to the death if something that they had guarded for thousands of years fell into the hands of others. You are referring to that astrolabe, right? Is it useful for you to have it? It's the key to our home, Miaoli said calmly. Tell me in detail. As far as I know, there aren't many Chinchillas now. I can help you. The premise is that I have to understand your situation. Although he hadn't found any traces of the Chinchillas, this also showed that there weren't many Chinchillas. Humans couldn't hide their numbers even if they wanted to. A trace of reminiscence flashed in Miaoli's eyes as she smiled bitterly and said, "We were defeated back then." Rinpoche listened quietly. His heart, however, was in a state of shock. According to Miaoli, the Chinchillas were defeated back then. Their enemy was the Rolling Wind race. Of course, the so-called war? In terms of numbers, it was only slightly better than the fight at the village entrance. After all, the more powerful the race, the lower their fertility rate. The two races added up to less than 30,000 people. A battle between thousands of people was considered a big battle. However, from her description, it was a battle that could destroy mountains and rivers. Compared to the immortal heaven of the human race and the ancestral atavism of the eight-armed race, this wasn't an exaggeration. In the chinchillas, such experts were called ancestral saints. They had been fighting this kind of war for thousands of years. At first, there were more than 50 ancestral saints on both sides, but in the end, there were only 3 ancestral saints left. The chinchillas had less than 100 people and were about to be destroyed. They had no choice but to leave through a stone gate that had been guarded below the ancestral land, and arrived at the 60,000 mountains. There was a lot of information in this information. At the very least, it showed that the chinchillas and the rolling wind race were both powerful races with long lifespans. When they reached adulthood, they would have the strength of the longevity heaven. What surprised Rinpoche even more was that the chinchillas and the rolling wind race actually came from the same world. Looking at the time, the rolling wind race outside the two-world mountains weren't the ones who fought with the chinchillas. They probably came to this world a long time ago. Since the chinchillas had a gate to come here, it wasn't surprising that the rolling wind race had come here earlier. As for Miao Li's appearance on Mount Liutsue, it was because the round disc had come to Mount Liutsue and she had stayed there to guard it. She didn't expect to stay there for thousands of years. She had already lost control 3,000 years ago. According to Miao Li's description, Rinpoche guessed that the round disc was charging. It seemed like there were still many secrets on Mount Liutsue that hadn't been discovered. After listening to this, Rinpoche was silent for a moment before laughing and saying, "It seems like we not only have her as a bridge of friendship, but also a common enemy." Miao Li's eyes suddenly turned cold, and a bone-chilling aura came from her body. The rolling wind race. They are here too? Yes, and we are fighting with them. Perhaps you will be happy to take revenge. Good. I didn't expect them to chase us all the way here. Miao Li's face was as cold as frost. Rinpoche didn't correct her misunderstanding. This is the stone gate you are talking about, right? Jiang Yunhe pressed the emblem on his sleeve a few times, and an image suddenly appeared in the air. On the image was a stone gate that was 4 meters tall. The shape was simple, and could even be considered simple. Not bad. What will happen if one passes through the stone gate without using the astrolabe? I'm not sure. People have passed through the stone gate in the past, but no one has ever returned. Rinpoche frowned. He now had some guesses about the stone gate. This should be a portal that connected to other worlds. However, no one knew whether it was a two-way or multi-directional portal. Many of the Wan race probably came here through the stone gate. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.